Mixing comes from wanting each element of a track to be heard. To a beginner, it sounds simple. Turn that single track up and you'll hear it better. But when you do that, other tracks will be crowded out and you'll have to turn something else up, and then something else up, and you'll just get back to where you started. And so, mixing becomes a game of giving each element only what it actually needs in order to be heard. And as it turns out, there are a lot of ways to do that. So in this video, we'll move beyond basic EQ and routing tips to give you 8 more ways to mix even better, helping you make the most out of every sound in a track. Number 1. Think in mid-side too. We're used to left-right channels with left-right speakers, left-right stereo channels in a mixer, and left-right almost everywhere in a DAW. But by switching to mid-side, we swap the left and right channels for 2 different ones. A mid channel, which practically plays everything in mono, the same in both channels. And the sides channel, which plays all the information that's stereo. By listening to individual channels or an entire mix through one of these in isolation, you can compare how strong the sound is in mono, which is how it might be played back on large sound systems, or how wide it is in stereo. Here, when we mute the mid signal, the stereo-only sounds are lacking in volume and in power. We can increase the stereo width in this plugin, but one quick way to give the sounds more width in the mix is to apply very short, differently timed delays to the left and the right of the sounds in question, which we're doing here by sending them to a return channel. Number 2, don't be afraid to move things. Mixing is all about separating elements from clouding each other, making sure that everything can be heard. We do this by panning, by changing volumes, and by carving out frequencies. But what about timing? If you're struggling to get a kick and a bass to work together, would things be better if the bass came in slightly later? Whether you're dealing with MIDI or with audio, can you move the bass just a little later in order to give room for the kick, without losing the impact of the bass itself? This idea can also apply to effects. If you're delaying a part with a host-synced delay time, like here in Replica, where every delay lands exactly on a quarter note, try unsyncing the delay and making it very slightly earlier or later. This gives us the same feel, but the delays don't clash with the exact timing of kicks, snares, and other elements. When elements don't hit at the exact same time, their signals don't add together, so this can also give you more headroom to turn the whole track up. Number 3, sidechain everything. A sidechained compressor will duck one element when a more important one plays, like pushing down a chord when a vocal comes in, or quickly getting rid of a bass sound when the kick hits. But modern mixing takes sidechaining even further, pushing far more elements out of the way while they're not needed. To do this, you should think of your mix as a hierarchy of which elements are more important, and use these to duck groups of other sounds that are less important. In this track, using a combination of VariComp and supercharger GT, the kick ducks the bass, snare and kick duck the keys, the percussion ducks a delay bus, and almost every important element ducks the reverb. Here's how it sounds without the sidechain compressors set up. And then when all the compressors are activated, Number 4. Monitor low. Whether you're monitoring using speakers or headphones, there are two very good reasons to reduce the volume of your interface's output for most of your mixing session. For one, this helps you avoid ear fatigue and makes you more able to withstand long sessions without losing your mind or your perspective. It also gives you a better impression of the elements that might be too loud in a mix. If you turn things down and all you can hear is hi-hats, it might help you realize that they're too dominant. Generally, if you can get a mix sounding good at low levels, you should be most of the way towards making it sound good when you turn things back up. Number 5. Listen in every possible situation. Listen on headphones, listen on monitors, listen to the track in mono, listen to just the left channel, just the right channel, just the sides channel, export the mix and listen on your phone speakers, listen to it over car speakers, and the list goes on. This will help you find problems, weak spots, or cancellations, and it will give you a sense of how the mix will sound when people play it back outside a proper music studio. If any of these ways of listening makes your mix sound bad compared to a commercial track, or causes elements to get buried or lost in your mix, it's time to go back and fix it. But if you do, you'll have to go back and listen to it once again, in a variety of situations, to make sure you haven't done some damage elsewhere. Number 6. Learn to gain stage. The mission in mixing is to find a space for something without turning it up, but a lot of effects do just that. Compression may add makeup gain, EQ cuts can bring down the level of a channel, distortion usually makes things louder, and almost everything makes at least a slight change in level, up or down. So these changes should be compensated for, whether that's using a gain control or a dry wet mix within the processor itself, or using a separate plugin. If you've made a change in EQ, tweak the output volume to compensate. If you've added distortion, make sure the levels are the same before and after. If your plugin gives you input and output metering, try and make the output match the input, so you know you're not messing with the mix's overall balance and creating more work for yourself. Number 7. Serial compression for dynamic instruments. Compression can be tough to get started with, and it can be even harder to master. Some instruments, such as vocals, guitars, and often pianos too, can be very dynamic. The difference between the loudest and quietest sounds they make will be very large compared to another instrument. Sometimes the best way to clamp down on these signals isn't just to use one compressor, it's to use two. Try using a fast compressor like VC76 with high threshold and ratio settings to clamp down on only the highest peaks and bring them back into line with the rest of the track. And then breaking out a more characterful compressor like VC2A in order to do the usual workhorse compression to make everything sound better. By using two compressors, each for its dedicated task, the result is usually a smoother, cleaner, more transparent compression, giving you more control over exactly how the final sound will react. Number 8. Remember the treble. Bass is hard to mix, the mid-range is hard to mix, and why should the high end be any exception? The highest frequencies of your mix should be polished, smooth, and not too grating, but they can be tough to get into shape. Using a high-pass filter over a return channel means you can apply an effect only to the top end of whatever instrument you send through that channel. Try using modulation plugins like chorus or flanging very subtly to really smooth out those high frequencies without making it sound so obvious. Here it's hard to detect the flanging in the entire mix, but when we solo just the highs on the return channel, we can hear it making them smoother. Things like distortion processors will add frequencies above what they're placed over, so adding distortion to only the high band probably won't even be that audible. The key to getting distortion in the higher frequencies is to distort a slightly lower band of frequencies. Placing the distortion on the high mids should make it show up in the high end of the mix.